Good morning. Oh. Oh. For those of you that were reporting problems with accessing the unit in Brightspace, I believe that has been resolved. If not, please let me know in the chat. But I've gone through and reloaded all the stuff from the sidebar, and I'm not sure what happened exactly. Some of the stuff came out as visible, and some of it wasn't, and I went back. I think I fixed everything. So if you are here for the day, if you would not mind, please letting me know in the chat that you are here for block 1. Okay, so today is day 15. It's the first day of the plants unit. There are a couple places here where you need the textbook. So what I'm going to do here is have, I will post the textbook chapter right under on this tab over here, right under where it says day 15. I will post the PDF of the textbook pages that you need. That's kind of a pain. I'm hoping that'll get fixed relatively quickly. So, first of all, this is the point in the course where I think it starts hitting students that, well, actually, maybe it hit you before this, but this course is very intense. We cover a lot of material. It's obviously better suited to spreading it out over 3 months as opposed to doing it in roughly 4 weeks. So whatever, we're doing our best. So at this time, I've relaxed what's on our agenda for the day a little bit to give you an opportunity to catch up on some stuff that you probably still need to do. So, I mean, obviously a number of people still need to finish the medical technology assignment, which is totally fine. So I've really reduced the amount of stuff that we're going to do today. This is sort of just like a half day, I guess, of lesson, and then the other half is sort of like, you owe me a bunch of stuff, please complete that stuff. It's really important as we start approaching the end of the course, and it'll fly by. There's only 2 units left, it'll really go by fast, that you do your very best to try and stay on top of deadlines. Because as we hit the end of the course, like it's suddenly going to be upon us, and then the course is done. And there isn't just like this buffer period where like, okay, give me a couple weeks or whatever. I'm writing your report card. It's like we're done. So I know that it's hard to come to terms with that because it's so, I don't know, the timeline is so odd compared to what we normally do. But please do your best to try and keep up with the deadlines. Again, if you're going a day over here and there, that's fine. Just let me know. But you have to be making a concerted effort to make sure that you stay on top of things. So anyway, as part of that, my part of that, I've drastically reduced what we're going to cover today. So what are we going to cover? Well, we're going to do an introduction to plants. I've pre-recorded this, again, in the interest of brevity, because I have a tendency to overtalk if given the opportunity to do so when I'm not speaking directly to people. And I'm just talking to a vacuum. Right now I'm just talking to a screen. I have a tendency to talk too much, and so that's one of the reasons why I pre-recorded this lesson. It's from a different quad, but it's actually from last year. I pre-recorded this last year, but it makes sense to pre-record here. You'll need the copy of the next course notes. It's linked right there. The introduction to plants is going to cover 2 things. The first part is basically just what types of plants are out there, and we've kind of already talked about this. Actually, wait, that might have been the other class. I might be misremembering this. In the diversity unit, we would have talked about Bryophytes, Pteridophytes, Gymnosperms, and Angiosperms. Yes? I think. I would have at least mentioned those, that those are the phylums of plants, the main categories of plants in Kingdom Plantae. So I start off with the lesson here just talking about what those main groupings are, and you should have a good sense for what the major groupings of plants are. And then I talk a little bit in detail about the differences between them. Okay, good. So I mentioned it in general. I'm going to talk about it in more detail here. And then I'm going to do a little bit of review about what makes something a plant. cellulose cell wall, photosynthesis. I talk a little bit more detail about what photosynthesis is. And then the last part is I'm going to look into one of the major organs of plants, which is the leaf. Some would say it's the most important organ of a plant, since it's where all of the plant's energy comes from. So we're going to talk about the anatomy of the leaf. So what are the different layers of leaf tissue, and then the function of the leaf. So how it works, where the different roles are for the different parts of the leaf. So what does the top part of the leaf do? What is there's several layers in the middle. What does this layer do? What does this layer do? So that's just, I guess you call it the anatomy of the leaf, which is a plant organ. This is not totally dissimilar to the animals unit, where we talk about 3 organ systems in animals. We're going to go take a slightly different tack in plants and talk about specific organs, because the organ systems in general are we wouldn't cover them in appropriate detail by just talking about organ systems. There are 2 main organ systems in plants. There's the shoot system, which is everything above ground, and then there's the root system, which is everything below ground. That's how we chose to categorize the systems in plants. And it's too vague. There's not enough detail there if I examine them in that way. So what we're going to do is just look at basically the key plant organs. Today we're going to investigate the leaf. Tomorrow we're going to talk about stems and roots. And then we're going to spend a day talking just about transportation, how a plant actually moves stuff around within the plant. The day after that, we will be doing a plant dissection, or a flower dissection rather. If you have access to a flower at home, that would be helpful. If you don't have access to a flower at home, you might just go out and have a look-see and just find a flower in the natural environment around your house. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go, I'm lucky I have a forest by my house, but I'm just going to go have a quick little walk over to the forest, find a flower. Hopefully you're able to do the same. And then I have a little video microscope here at my house, and we're going to do some examinations of flowers, look at how sexual reproduction works in plants and how flowers work. So that's sort of a broad overview of the entire unit. Today we're focusing in on what types of plants exist and the leaf as an organ. Okay, no worries. So once you're done with the lesson component here, there are some questions from the textbook and an exit quiz. It really is just one lesson. The lesson's about 45-ish minutes long. Add any words to your vocabulary list, and then the rest of your time today, you have to work on anything you need to complete, and there may be a fair amount of that stuff. So do your best by midnight tonight to have the quiz completed for the animals unit, the medical technology assignment, and the vocabulary list. And if you're not on track for that, don't forget to drop me an email. Okay? So that's where we're headed. I'm gonna give you time to go and just do this lesson now, but before I do that, I just really quickly want to summarize here the types of plants, because I'm not sure how good of a job I actually do in the presentation. So here. So just to be clear, because this is review from the last unit, when you look at sort of the evolution of plants, the earliest branch that branches off of protists. So if you can imagine, this is a branch branching off of what are protists over here. This would be multicellular protists that are green algae and red algae actually specifically. Okay, so there's a branch coming off evolutionarily here. And the original branch that would have come off is bryophytes. So bryophytes are what you would call mosses. So they are very low-lying plants. They're not all mosses, actually. There are some other categories of plants that fit into bryophytes, but when you think of a moss, a low-lying plant that is extremely thin in terms of cellular structure, and it can't grow very tall because of its lack of vascularization. It doesn't have tubes inside to transport water and nutrients around, so it's going to be low-lying. So that's a bryophyte. That's sort of like the original branch of plants. Has all the properties of plants. And then a more recent branch off of that are the pteridophytes. So pteridophytes are what you would call ferns, although there are some pteridophytes that are that are not ferns, but they are all sort of fern-like in appearance. This is my attempt at drawing a fern. Okay, so those are pteridophytes. They do have vascularization, and there's a branch off of pteridophytes evolutionarily. That is Gymnosperms. Gymnosperms are what would have been the first trees on Earth. And there still are plenty of gymnosperms around. You would think of them as conifers. Christmas tree-like organisms. They have needle-like leaves, and really important for our purposes, they reproduce with a series of cones. You've seen like a pine cone before. That's their reproductive organ, is they have male and female cones. That's gymnosperms. A more recent evolution of gymnosperms is angiosperms. Well, I'm running out of space here. I didn't really do this very well. Hold on, I'm going to redirect this downward. This isn't a very good, this is not a very good phylogenetic tree due to whatever I'm doing right here. But anyway, you get the idea. So there's a branch off of gymnosperms called angiosperms. Angiosperms are flowering plants. So any plant that has a flower on it, and there's all different kinds of flowering plants, those are angiosperms. They are the most common plants now. Of the angiosperms, there are sort of two main subcategories of angiosperms, and we're going to talk about these. Because angiosperms are the most common, we're going to focus mostly, the unit is mostly going to focus on angiosperms, and we're going to talk about the two sort of subtypes of angiosperms that exist, and those are called monocots and dicots. Now, dicot and monocot are short forms for monocotyledon and dicotyledon. And a cotyledon is a seed leaf. So a seed leaf is when a seed first germinates. There is, if you look at the little embryonic plant that first emerges, they have a number of leaves on them. They're not really true leaves because they don't really do photosynthesis. They're sort of just like the leaves of the embryo, if that makes any sense. And a monocotyledon, which is the seed leaf, has one. So when it first emerges from the seed, there will be one seed leaf, and you can see it right there. There's the little seed leaf. Now, I'm not really sure what I was trying to draw there. I should have picked something like a corn kernel. In fact, I'm gonna redo this real quick here and draw like a kernel of corn, because corn is a monocotyledon. I think what I did draw was something that looked like a bean, and beans are actually dicots. So if I'm going to draw a bean and show it coming out of there, when they come out, they have two little leaves on them, two seed leaves, two cotyledons. So those are dicotyledons. And I mean, this sounds like something trivial, one leaf or two leaf on it, but from a genetic standpoint, from an evolutionary standpoint, these groups are actually quite diverse from each other. They're quite different in their anatomy. So oftentimes when we talk about the stem, when we talk about the roots, we'll say, okay, well, this is what a monocot root looks like. This is what a dicot root looks like. They are different structurally from each other, and you need to know the differences. So when we're talking about those things, we're talking about subcategories of angiosperms here, or flowering plants. Now, it's important to note that in a lot of ways, gymnosperms are very similar to dicots. So in a lot of the notes, it says like, oh, this is true for gymnosperms and dicots. And that's because gymnosperms and dicots both form not all of them form trees, but a lot of them are tree-like. They become trees. And so there's a certain layout of anatomy that is, conducive to having a strong tree structure. And Dicots and Gymnosperms have that anatomy. So oftentimes there will be very similar structurally, Dicots and Gymnosperms. And I point that out a number of times. So there are some similarities here between Dicots and Gymnosperms, whereas Monocots are usually quite different. Okay, so that's the basic layout of plants. I'm going to go through this again in the note. Again, jump around if you want. I'm not trying to hit it over the head, but I'm not sure how well I actually explain this idea that when we're talking about Monocots and Dicots, we're actually talking about offshoots of Angiosperms, and that's kind of an important point. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys get to it. I'll let you watch the note, or watch the video here, and then the second part is about leaves. Okay, in roughly 3 minutes, you can reload this page. And then there will be the textbook appearing, textbook chapter appearing with that. I just had to go find it. So, okay, let me know if you need anything, guys, and good luck. I will still be back at 11:05 for attendance.